Iki is a pathetic loser who enrolls in a magic academy even though he can't use magic. However, everything changes when he reveals he's an S-rank swordsman and cracks the strongest baddie in school, who now has to do anything he wants. The story starts with Iki getting beaten up and abused by his parents because he is weak and has little aptitude for magic. One day, he gets fed up and decides to run away, but on the way, he has an encounter with a strange samurai who notices his pain and motivates him to train hard and level up. Years later, Iki transfers to a magic academy, where he begins training non-stop on how to fight. So one morning after a training session, he returns to his dorm, and is shocked to find Princess Stella, an overpowered princess, unplotted. To even the score, Iki proceeds to take off his shirt, but this earns him a dirty slap to the face. After that, Stella reports Iki to Principal Kurano, so Iki arrives at Kurano's office and explains that he didn't mean to peek at Stella's plots. Hearing this, Kurano insists he'll have to take responsibility for his actions, so Iki turns around and starts apologizing to Stella, promising to let her do anything she wants to him. Stella takes advantage of this, telling him to twerk on a rooftop and unalive himself right after, as the only way to deserve her forgiveness, but Iki refuses. Due to this, Stella charges up her fire magic, promising to roast him to a crisp for barging into her room while she was dressing up. To save himself, Iki yells that he couldn't look away because she was hot, which makes Stella turn soft. In that moment, he tries to clarify that the room she was changing in was his, but Stella insists it's hers. Before they can start arguing, Kurano reveals that they're both right because they are now roommates, leaving them shocked. Kurano takes them back to the dorm building to show that their name tags have already been placed and there's nothing she can do about it. Confused, Iki asks why Stella, who is the most powerful student, is being paired with him, an F-rank student who is repeating the year. Kurano says it's because they are both oddballs with no one ranking close to them. Following that, Princess Fireball starts arguing with Iki over the rules of the dorm because she doesn't want Iki to pull a fast one on her at night. Seeing this, Kurano suggests they settle their differences the proper way with a duel, and Iki is cool with it. His reaction surprises Stella, because she knows she's the most powerful student in the academy, and there's no way Iki can defeat her in a duel. Stella then agrees to fight him, but cranks things up by stating that whoever loses has to become the winner's servant. An hour later, they arrive at a battle arena for the mock duel, and as Kurano explains the rules of the duel, Stella and Iki draw out their swords. At the start of the match, Stella attacks Iki with her blazing sword that roasts anything on contact, so Iki stays calm and focuses on dodging and parrying her attacks. As he easily pulls this off, Stella is shocked and wonders if he's going to spend the whole fight dodging. So Iki surprises her with an attack that mimics hers, thanks to his blade steel skill, and it shocks Stella that someone as low-ranked as him is keeping up with her. As they keep clashing, Iki secures an opening and manages to land a deadly hit, but to his surprise, his blade doesn't affect her because she's enhancing her body with magic. Deep down, Stella is stunned because she didn't imagine she would have to rely on her magic to defeat Iki. Since she now knows that Iki is crazy strong, she unleashes her full magic power to finish him. But Iki dodges using light speed and counters with a critical hit that knocks her out. Although he collapses moments later, he is awarded the winner of the battle. That evening, Kurano visits Stella at the infirmary and tells her that Iki is also worn out because the skill he used can only be activated for a minute and drains all his energy for a day. Stella finds it hard to acknowledge Iki as an F rank, but Kurano tells her that the ranking system only focuses on magic ability instead of real combat skills. She then reminds Stella of her goal to grow beyond her current level and advises her that working with Iki will help her achieve it. A while later, Stella returns to the room and finds Iki sleeping. She gets captivated by his Jason Statham build and ends up copping a good feel of him. But when she realizes he's been watching her the entire time, she bonks her head on the bed. After that, he patches her up and then reminds her of their deal, where she gets to be his servant. And this ticks her off as she imagines a lot of roleplay he'll have her do. Instead, Iki surprises her by asking her to be open to building a relationship as his roommate. Upon seeing the hesitant look on her face, he offers to talk to Kurano if she doesn't want it, but she agrees to it on the condition that he call her by her regular name. Early the next day, Iki's sister, Shizuku, boards a train for the academy while noting that she has come to see him whom their parents didn't love. Meanwhile, Iki takes a break from running, and Stella pants heavily like a horse wheezing from carrying a huge load. While he sips his drink, he informs her that he does the Saitama and Goku run every day and wouldn't know if she can match his pace. Stella claims it's no big deal even though her lungs are about to explode, and when Iki sees that, he offers her some of his sports drink, but she realizes that they'll have an indirect kiss. He immediately tells her not to worry if she is not comfortable with it, but the fiery princess immediately grabs the bottle and locks lips with the same spot he drank from. After drinking, she notices him beaming a smile on like he just won a lottery, so she asks him what's up, and he tells her about Shizuku's enrollment and how excited she has been to see him, since it's been 4 years since they last saw each other. Stella then asks if she is one of those sisters he likes to get freaky with, but he promises that they aren't in Alabama. Later that morning in class, a teacher named Yuri struggles to keep herself awake while welcoming them to the new session and reminding them of the tournament kicking off in a week, which is to decide which students are strong enough to represent the academy. Stella asks for more details on the fights, and Iki learns that the battle happens once a day, which means he can use his 1-minute move. Yuri then tries to motivate them with a chant, but suddenly, she barfs up a lot of blood, and it scares the students. Minutes later, at the infirmary, she tells Stella not to worry because she usually pukes a liter of blood every day, but Iki still tells her to be careful. Then he explains to Stella that Yuri is part of the reason he could enroll in the academy. After she says something about how last year was unfair for him, they both head out, and Stella asks what she meant, so he tries to explain how there was no grading system for magic before he enrolled. However, when a 4-eyed hottie named Kagame suddenly stuffs his arm into her melons and claims to be his biggest fan, Stella forgets about her first question and demands to know when he became the king of Riz. He then asks Kagame who she is, so she proceeds to explain how she became obsessed after watching his duel with Stella, and she asks if he would like a feature on her latest news article publication for the school. After promising to talk about it later, he tries to catch up with Stella, who is fuming with jealousy, but then he spots Shizuku, who calls out to him, saying she has missed him deeply. Happy to see her, Iki tells her how he was just about to look for her, but Shizuku surprised him by jumping at him and giving him a steamy kiss. As everyone watching freezes in shock, Kagame takes crazy shots that can compete with Peter Parker's photos of Spider-Man. Stella, on the other hand, completely flips and asks what kind of creepy relationship they both have. Shizuku completely ignores her and tries to get another kiss, but Stella pulls her away and asks Iki why he lied when he said they have a normal relationship. As he tries to explain himself, Shizuku switches over to demon mode and asks Stella what gives her the right to interfere with their reunion. So Stella, out of options, reveals she's Iki's servant. Once again, Kagami starts cooking up headliners for the news article, while Iki struggles to preserve his reputation, but Stella only makes matters worse by claiming they even had a special workout in his bed last night. Upon hearing this, Shizuku summons her sword to murk Stella, but she also summons her sword to fight for Iki's heart, and they both end up destroying the hallway. Minutes later, Kurono takes them to one of the restrooms and says they have to spend the entire day cleaning as punishment, but they continue roasting each other until Shizuku arrives at her dorm building. When Stella tells her to stop acting like her relationship with Iki is that special, she gets pissed and tells Stella that she will never understand how he felt after years of being neglected by everyone else in their family. This surprises Stella, so she tries to ask for more details, but Shizuku says it's none of her business before entering her room and meeting her roommate Alice. Shortly after that, Stella runs into Iki on his way back from training and gives him a sports drink before asking if his family really neglected him. He spits the drink out in shock, but after she says Shizuku mentioned it, he decides to tell her about his tragic life. For starters, he reminds her of the legendary samurai, Ryoma, who saved Japan in the Great War, and says that he is actually his great-grandfather. And it turns out his family is very famous for producing the strongest blazers in the country, but because he was born with no affinity for magic, everyone in the family treated him like garbage. After years of neglect, he decided to leave the house one day, but that was almost his last mistake because a blizzard suddenly picked up that evening and almost sent him to another world. Just as he was about to collapse, the frustration from being treated like nothing caused him to get pissed, and Ryoma, who had just finished training, spotted him. So he told Iki to use the frustration as fuel and keep fighting. Because of this, he started training as hard as he could all alone. But after enrolling in the academy, his family convinced the previous principal to start grading students based on their magical abilities just so he would not graduate. This sob story causes Stella to think they are the same, since she also trained alone for years, so she promises to help him level up in any way she can. Meanwhile, Shizuku has also finished telling Alice all about her obsession with Iki's Clizzy, but instead of calling the psych ward, he promises to act like her big sister whenever she needs someone to talk to. A couple of hours later, Stella decides to join Iki in the shower, on the pretext of helping him wash up as his maid. There, he manages to remain composed, but things take a freaky turn when she drops the sponge to use her jugs, instead after finding out he has a high affinity for them. Like that isn't enough, her plot cover drops all of a sudden, causing him to feel the real thing, and she ends up getting embarrassed. Several days later, after an intense training session, Stella tells Iki that she has already received an email about her first tournament match, and she's up against Momo, her senior. Iki recalls how Momo fought, so he tries telling Stella about him, but she stops him and claims to like it when she doesn't know anything about her opponent. Doing that will help her practice for when she goes up against unknown enemies in the future. After observing her, Iki says that despite being polar opposites, they have the best relationship in the academy. Stella's face goes beet red right after hearing this, and she gets saved by the bell. As Iki heads to class, she stops him and stutters like crazy while trying to ask him out on a date, but just then, Shizuku beats her to it and he agrees. This breaks Stella's heart, and she realizes it's a skill issue. The next day, Stella tags along to the hangout, and Shizuku is irritated to see her. While they clash heads and come up with ideals to prove why the other doesn't deserve Iki, the aforementioned is confused as he wonders who Alice is and why his choice of dressing doesn't match his gender. Seeing this, Shizuku introduces Alice as her roommate, and Alice reveals that he's a maiden at heart. He even teases Iki to the point that Shizuku draws out a blade, ready to drop him in the alleyway. After stopping Shizuku from starting another fight, they all head out, but upon arriving at the shopping mall, Stella notices that the siblings have been holding hands, so she tells Shizuku to stop. Shizuku then says they have always held hands since they were little, and as soon as Stella asks to hold Iki's hand as well, Shizuku plays the psychological card by reminding her to stay in her place as Iki's servant, or she'll reveal her feelings for Iki. Left with no choice, Stella fumes and hurls words at Iki. Moments later, the girls try to enjoy a nice parfait, but then Iki suddenly leans towards Shizuku and picks a piece of it from her face, before licking it and commending her outfit. This causes her to break character, and Alice teases her about it. Stella, wanting the same treatment, then covers her entire face in parfait for him to eat from, but he decides to get her a towel instead. While Shizuku is surprised at how far Stella would go just for Iki's attention, Alice admits that he's almost rooting for Stella. After cleaning Stella up, Alice follows Iki to the restroom, and Iki thanks Alice for building trust with Shizuku, because she has always had issues with being around strangers. After Alice promises to keep looking out for her, Iki tries to leave, but Alice suddenly stops him and then signifies that he senses trouble. A few seconds later, a thug among several who plan to take over the mall enters the restroom and covers the entire bathroom with bullets. After the second reminds him of their boss's orders to take every hostage alive, the goon tells him not to worry since no one was inside, so they both head out. With them gone, Iki and Alice step out of one of Alice's portals. Thanks to Alice's ability to move in the shadows, they sneak around and arrive at the surveillance room moments later. There, Alice monitors the thug's movements while Iki calls Kurano and briefs her on the current situation. She tells him to keep everyone safe and permits him to use his weapon, because law enforcement is still on their way, and won't be able to do anything since the goons are asking for money in exchange for the lives of the hostages. While he and Alice come up with a plan, Shizuku asks Stella to buy her some time so she can activate a powerful skill. However, the crazed thug who loves emptying his bullets smacks a lady for talking back to him. This pisses off her son, so he tries to attack him for hurting his mom, but the thug eats him and prepares to turn him into a kebab. Suddenly, Stella steps in and melts his bullets with her heat. Upon seeing this, the thug's leader, Bisho, shows up and apologizes to Stella for his useless comrade's behavior. Still, he tries to punish the lady for raising such a disrespectful brat, and in that instance, Stella leaps at him with her summoned sword. But he offsets the attack by absorbing it and then pummels her by releasing the absorbed energy. He then explains how one of his rings absorbs a blazer's ability while the other reflects it against them, and for him not to take the lady's life, Stella will have to apologize with her milkers on display. Upon hearing this, Iki tries to intervene, but Alice stops him and tells him to let Shizuku cook. Stella takes off the clothes, and Bisho gets infatuated with her, so he reminds her to yank off her plot armor. Iki, who can't bear it anymore, tries leaping at Bisho, but Alice uses her magic to hold Iki in place. Just then, Shizuku activates a huge water barrier to protect the hostages and prevent everyone from seeing Stella's plot, and in that moment, Bisho orders his men to shoot at it and find the magic caster. Iki, now given the freedom to act, uses his skill to track every bullet at super speed before jumping off the edge to attack. Like before, Bisho prepares to absorb his attack, but Iki slices off his entire arm instead. Bisho bellows and demands that his men shoot at Iki, but then Stella reveals she has knocked them out. Iki rushes over to hug her, and suddenly takes a knee as the effects of his skill zap his energy level. All of a sudden, a lady who was hiding among the hostages holds another person at gunpoint and orders them to surrender. But she gets taken out by a magic arrow before a student named Shizuya reveals himself. Shortly after that, he takes all the credit for saving the hostages, and when Iki walks over to thank him, Shizuya asks Iki why he is still in the academy since he will never become a knight with his useless skill. Upon hearing this, Stella walks over to tell him that Iki is way stronger than him, but Shizuya starts laughing and asks if she is talking about the same Iki who ran away from their first duel. He then tells Iki that it's finally time to settle the scores. Just then, Iki checks his mail and sees that Shizuya is his first opponent in the tournament. The following week, Stella kicks off the tournament by facing Momo. As soon as the match commences, Stella talks him into forfeiting the match without the need to use her sword. Some hours later, she nearly experiences a heart attack when Kagami barges into the dressing room to congratulate all three of them on winning their first fights. While Stella tries to cover her massive bazingas, Alice gets intrigued by Kagame's job as the school's top reporter and starts scheming to spread gossip with her. Later on, Stella finds Iki watching videos of Shizuya's previous fights, and she says Shizuya doesn't fight like a knight, but like a chicken with his camouflage attacks. Iki then says Shizuya would never go for someone like her, because her attacks have a large area of effect and will strip Shizuya of his camouflage. Unlike her, Shizuya is a bad matchup for Iki. Because Iki isn't the sensory type and he doesn't have an ability that can pinpoint Shizuya's location. Realizing how things might be tough for Iki, Stella worries about him, but makes him promise her that he'll defeat Shizuya no matter what. Later that day, while going for his evening jog, Iki recalls his past incident with Shizuya and he vows to win no matter what. Just then, he spots Alice, who shows up to talk to him. Alice then asks to know what had happened the previous year, so Iki reveals that about a year ago, his family had tried to get him expelled through the previous principal, and once Shizuya got a whiff of it, he demanded a duel with Iki. Back then, Iki took a beating from him without fighting back, knowing that if he did, he'd be expelled for an unofficial duel. Because of this, his already gutter-level reputation took a massive hit. After listening to everything, Alice says Iki is already used to enduring pain from others that he cannot hear when his soul is screaming out for help. He wishes one day someone would hear Iki's aching soul and pull him out of his misery. The next day, which is when Iki's fight with Shizuya is scheduled to take place, Shizuku, Stella, and Alice meet with Iki, and they suggest passing the time with something fun since he still has to wait a little longer before the fight. But he decides to pass on the offer to focus on his preparation. Shortly after that, he completes the sign-in, only to get a surprise visit from Nene, an old friend of Kurono. He quickly recognizes her and asks why she would be interested in him, but she moves closer and asks if he would be down for a late-night cuddle session. Just then, Kurono shows up and threatens to reunite her with the heavenly beings if she keeps flirting with students before dragging her away. In the waiting room, moments later, Iki tries to channel all his emotions into the fight, but he suddenly gets a panic attack right before they call him out to the arena. After Shizuya walks out and flexes his pearly whites to rizz up the ladies watching, he's surprised Iki showed up, so he promises to obliterate him in front of everyone. As soon as they receive the signal to start, Shizuya turns the entire arena into his personal forest and activates his vanishing skill to remain concealed. However, Iki easily senses all his attacks and blocks them. Shizuya mocks Iki, saying he hasn't changed. Then he decides to take things up a notch by announcing where he'll shoot Iki before the attack hits. He immediately follows up with invisible arrows, which knock Iki off the tree and cause him immense pain. Stella at first doesn't understand why Iki didn't use his 1-minute move to knock Shizuya out the moment the match commences, but Alice explains that Iki can't use it because he's a nervous wreck. Stella struggles to process what he means since she's always trained with him and they've overcome hardship, but then she realizes the expectation she had placed on him and how he had put up a facade to make it seem like he was confident. While Shizuya continues inflicting damaging wounds across Iki's body, Iki gradually loses his stamina and confidence. To make matters worse, all the other students start laughing at him, so Shizuya delivers one final blast through his spine and joins the rest of the academy to insult him. Stella, who is pissed at everyone, yells at them to shut it. Then she yells at Iki to get himself together because the version of him she's in love with won't back down without a fight. The words sink into him, and he thanks her for the encouragement, so he starts by punching some senses back into his skull. Shizuya makes fun of him for thinking he can change his fate, so he fires an arrow at Iki. But by then Iki has activated his 1-minute skill, and he catches the arrow barehanded. Shizuya is shocked and believes it's a fluke, so he bathes Iki in a flurry of invisible arrows. Iki activates his perfect vision, and parries all the arrows like Sekiro homing in on him. Once Shizuya realizes that his camouflage won't save him, he makes a run for it while trying to sweet-talk Iki into letting him go, but Iki ignores him. So Shizuya tries every useless attack in his arsenal. Seeing that Iki is about to make his final move, Shizuya plunges his aura status into the deep blue sea by admitting that he is scared of getting cut by a sword. But Iki ignores this and attacks him nevertheless. Lucky for him, Iki misses by a millimeter, but Shizuya has already passed out from shock, automatically giving Iki the win. However, Iki also passes out from exhaustion and wakes up in the infirmary hours later to see Stella drooling while waiting for him. Meanwhile, Shizuku waits outside to give Stella a fair chance at love, and when Alice sees her, he hugs her for being a kind soul. When Stella wakes up, she screams from embarrassment and attacks Iki for letting a loser deal so much damage. He apologizes for losing his edge and suddenly says he has feelings for her, and she initially freezes in shock before claiming that she only said it back then to motivate him, but he tells her not to worry about feeling awkward, because he just wanted to tell her how he felt. The next moment, she makes him close his eyes and leans in to kiss him on the cheek, before admitting that she also has feelings for him. This makes Iki happy, and he hugs her tightly before admitting that he feels he can grow stronger with her. After that, they promise to reach for the top before they battle it out to see who is better. 2 weeks later, while Stella practices solo, she wonders why Iki hasn't made a move on her ever since they started dating, so a thought of him being a shrimp comes to her mind. Meanwhile, he just finished whacking his next victim, which is his 5th win in the tournament, and he becomes the fans' favorite on campus. In class the following day, Kagami throws her melons at him before asking if he can give lessons to her friends. Upon seeing Stella's death threats, he replies as calmly as possible and agrees to help them out. Seeing Iki hog all the popular girls gets the boys jealous, so they badmouth him, calling him a failure. Shortly afterwards, Yuri enters the class for homeroom, but she ends up in the infirmary a few seconds later after throwing up her blood cells again. As a result, the students return to their dorm earlier than normal. Indoors, Stella calls Iki a softball and then asks him if training all those girls is a smart choice because they might become his opponents in the future. He then claims to be okay with it since it means he will have better fights and will also help the girls get better in case they end up in a situation like what happened in the mall. She calls him a softie, and when he agrees without batting an eye, she blushes. Now that they are alone, she asks him about their relationship direction, given that for 2 weeks they haven't done any couple stuff, but just then she turns around and sees him already off to La La Land. The following afternoon, he starts his first lesson with Kagame and some of her friends, by teaching them how to balance their weight on one foot. While at it, a bunch of jealous guys show up with weapons, hoping to beat him up for snatching all their baddies. But he knocks them all down like a stack of dollar store dominoes and reminds them of the rule against fights outside the arena. Kagami expects them to use the popular villainous line and run off, but instead the boys kowtow, begging him to teach them so they can score points and be famous with the ladies. Moments later, the boys join the girls, and just then, some 10 out of 10 shawties pull up for lessons. Iki takes them all to a new spot and tells Stella how happy he is to see them improving already. Stella then tries to give him one of the drinks she bought, but Shizuru beats her to it and yaps about how she is the best sister ever. She sees Stella with an extra drink and asks her who the second is for, but Stella claims they are hers and she forcefully gulps them down. After the second bottle, she asks to join his classes since he has already agreed to teach every baddie around. But when he hesitates to say yes, her insecurities flare up, so she tells him not to worry and storms off. While rambling on about how stupid he is, she runs into Alice, who has just discovered the wonders of a new reverse harem romance game and borrows it to play make-believe with herself in the room. Just as she gets to the good part, she wishes she could get to do a lot of couple things with Iki, and to her surprise, he walks in to talk about a lesson he has with the girls. Stella immediately gets defensive and asks what it has to do with her since he doesn't plan to teach her anyway. So he explains to her that it's because her sword techniques are fundamentally different from his. He tells her how his sword style is cheap, and trying to teach her, who is already beyond his level, will do little to nothing. On hearing this, Stella folds and happily agrees to join them for their outing. The following day on the bus, she beams a smile while recalling how Iki had rizzed her the previous night. Upon arriving at the pool, the girls get into their swimsuits, and the boys drool after seeing Stella, Shizuku, and Kagami. Stella and Shizuku start the usual argument over who gets to spend more time with him, while the guys from class express gratitude because they never expected to be in the same room with a bunch of hotties in swimwear. As Iki starts the lesson, Stella gets jealous again because he hasn't been spending enough time with her, so she decides to try out the underwater exercise to distract herself. However, just as she enters the zone, Kagame suddenly asks if they have cracked yet and almost causes her to drown. After helping her cough up the water, she asks the same question and says she has been dying to know how their relationship is going, but Stella denies dating him and says she would never fall in love with a commoner. Kagame then announces that she'll go for Iki. Doing this riles Stella up, and she ends up confessing that she's dating Iki. Meanwhile, Shizuku has just asked Alice if he finds it weird that she wants to start an Alabama love story with Iki, and this zesty creep lies just to make her think it's perfectly normal to be insane. Back at the fountain, Kagami learns all about Stella's boring relationship with Iki, and after several minutes of convincing her to tell him what she really wants, she leaves and calls him to speak with her. Stella then asks for his opinion on her swimsuit, and after saying that he likes them, Iki suddenly asks if their relationship is really okay at its current level. Instead of processing what he just said with her brain, Stella convinces herself that he has gotten tired of dating a boring chick that never tries to get freaky, so she tears up and tells him to leave if he wants. However, he gets confused by this and tries to explain what he meant, but she starts arguing about how he never tries to do anything romantic with her. The next moment, he also gets upset and argues about it until they both realize that they have been the ones too slow to fulfill their fantasies. They then agree to say what they want together and end up sharing their first kiss. Hours later, they get on the bus to return to campus, and both receive another fight email saying that their next opponents are members of the student council. The following afternoon, while Iki takes on Renren, a very agile girl, who continues yapping about how she is going to defeat him with her super speed, Stella faces off against Saijo, another council member who brags about the strength of his black market vibranium sword. To nobody's surprise, Iki evades Renren's reach and easily bonks her, earning him the victory. Also, Stella easily shatters Saijo's sword with a single strike, and she moves up the ladder. After the match, Iki complains about his wrist, but before Stella can pacify him, Shizuku shows up to steal her man by doting on him and acting soft. Unable to bear the wrench, Stella argues with her, but Alice intervenes by informing Iki about a chick that has been stalking him over the last few days. Iki admits that he always knew, but just wanted to let it slide since a lot of girls have been trying to get a whiff of his lightsaber recently. When he calls out to her, she suddenly freaks out and ends up falling into the water, so they take her to the infirmary, where they learn she's their senior who has trouble speaking with boys. She introduces herself as Ayasa, and Iki gets intrigued by her surname, so he asks if she is related to Kaito, a famous samurai. To his surprise, she reveals that Kaito is actually her father. Iki instantly turns into a fanboy and glazes Kaito while Shizuku narrates how Kaito rose to fame as the most skillful swordsman despite not having any magical abilities. When asked what happened to Kaito since Iki hasn't heard about him in a while, Ayasa's face darkens and she reveals how Kaito got into an accident and was hospitalized. Iki immediately apologizes for being insensitive, but Ayase tells him not to bother, and she's glad her dad has a fan. The next moment, Shizuku and Stella start demanding to know why she was stalking Iki and threaten to attack if she doesn't give them a good reason. So Ayase admits to being fascinated by his sword skills and says she was just too shy to ask him for lessons. Iki realizes that being nonchalant and hardworking is more than enough for a lot of snow bunnies to trip for him. To quench her hunger, Iki decides to train her just so she doesn't go crazy from desperation. The following afternoon, they start a sparring session in one of the fields on campus, and after carefully watching her every move, Iki tells her to stop because he just realized why she fights like a blind sloth. After saying that she is trying too hard to be on the same level as her dad, he reminds her that they have different body structures, which means she can't pull off his moves by copying every single thing he does. Ayase immediately accepts and begs him for tips to improve her technique. However, when he suddenly starts massaging her drumsticks and claims that it's all a part of the process, she starts fighting demons she never even knew existed, while Shizuku and Stella wonder why he never did that to them. After almost touching the no-no spot, Iki gets back up and tells her to try maintaining the stance, and says she'll get used to it with time. With that, he tells her to continue their spar, and in 2 swings, she has her sword at his throat. She then grabs his hand to thank him for everything, but he tells her not to worry about it. After the day's training, as they head to their dorms, Ayase continues gushing over how big and strong Iki's hands felt, and while he accepts the compliment, Stella gets jealous and asks Shizuku why she is not pissed off. When Shizuku explains that she will always be happy with anyone who manages to make Iki smile, Stella realizes that she has been acting stupid this entire time, and decides to let them share the moment together. However, as soon as she gets back to the room with him, she asks if he really enjoyed feeling up Ayase's drumsticks. Iki then takes her hand and assures her that he only enjoyed helping her get stronger since she has clearly spent a lot of time improving her skills. He brainwashes Stella with words and kisses her goodnight. For the rest of the week, Stella joins the training session to act like she also cares about Ayase when she is really just trying to keep her vanilla buns away from Iki. Days later, Ayase takes them both out to dinner as a way of saying thank you and tries to figure out how Stella manages to look so hot despite eating like a glutton. Suddenly, a delinquent group shows up and talks trash about Ayase. Naturally, Iki calmly tells them not to badmouth her, but then, the leader, Kurado, suddenly pours him a drink as an apology, only to smash the bottle on Iki's head. Stella immediately gets up to fight, but Iki holds her back and claims it's no big deal, despite the heavy stream of blood leaking from his skull. This causes Kurado to get even more upset, so he spits on Iki to rile him up, but Iki smiles through it all instead of defending his pride, and this pisses Stella off. But Kurado, seeing that Iki won't act, heads out with his squad. After he leaves, Stella asks Iki why he didn't fight, because she thinks he can stop Kurado, but Iki tells her he isn't so sure about that, and he tells them Kurado seemed insanely strong. Just then, Misagi, a member of the student council, shows up and tells them that Kurado is one of the strongest blazers in a rival school. After she commends him on being smart enough to refuse the fight, another student council member, who's dressed as if going for Vogue, shows up to support Misagi. Moments later, as they head home, Iki wonders how Misagi healed the cut on his head. But Stella becomes more curious about Kurado's gang and asks Ayase why they all seem to know her, but she remains quiet. Ayase tries talking, but just then, Iki and Ayase receive an email about their next fight, and learn they will face each other. Devastated, Ayase looks back at him and suddenly runs off. Ever since, she stopped showing up for training, and on the night before the fight, he tells Alice about the mail Ayase had sent him to meet with him. And Alice warns him that she'll definitely want to do something to prevent him from showing up at the tournament, since she's hellbent on winning. Despite Alice's advice, Iki reminds Alice that Ayase said she liked his hands, so he makes up his mind to see her. Moments later, he heads to the rooftop, and he sees her smiling at him. Ayase secretly calls Iki to the rooftop late at night for a private discussion. When he arrives, she asks him what he would do if he faced an opponent he could never defeat. Surprised by the unexpected question, Iki calmly responds that he would try his hardest while fighting fairly, because a victory earned without honor means nothing to him. But Ayase immediately rejects that idea, claiming that justice without results is worthless. She tells him that, as for her, she would do whatever it takes to win, even if it involves making a deal with Diddy. At that moment, Ayase summons her weapon and cuts through the rooftop fence in an instant, before throwing herself backward off the building. Shocked, Iki reacts instantly, activating his Atu Shura and diving after her to save her. He's then forced to use the school walls as a projectile to change their direction and land them safely in a pool. Asking why she had done something so reckless, Ayase replies that she had intentionally forced him to use his trump card, so his body would suffer heavily from the after effects, giving her an advantage during their upcoming duel. Even after manipulating him, Ayase looks visibly guilty, but she convinces herself she has no choice if she wants to become strong enough to reclaim her family's honor. She then walks away, leaving him there. Given that he had just used his most powerful move, Iki's body suffers from serious exhaustion, but he still struggles to make it back to the dorm. As soon as he gets there, he crashes straight into Stella's melons while she dreams about getting crack. Stella wakes up in shock and immediately starts panicking, thinking Iki is trying to make her dream come true, finally. However, she quickly notices that he has passed out, so she becomes genuinely worried. The following morning, Iki wakes up in the medical ward and is surprised to see Stella, Shizuku, and Alice all looking worried while hovering over him. Getting himself together, he suddenly panics, thinking he has forfeited his duel. But the others assure him that he still has a couple of hours before the designated time. Shortly after, he is summoned by Chairman Kurono, who questions him about the incident on the rooftop. Seeing the amount of damage done to the school building, she had immediately deduced that Iki must have been involved, since she had received reports about his sudden hospitalization. Even though he had been tricked by Ayase, Iki refuses to expose her, stating that he will be willing to bear the consequences for the damage. Instead, he asks about the history behind Ayase's family. The chairman is then forced to explain the truth behind Ayase's unusual behavior. Years earlier, her father, who was known as the last samurai, lost everything after being defeated by Kurado, the swordsman they had run into at the restaurant the previous day. Their family name had then lost its reputation, causing her father to eventually collapse into a coma. Since then, Ayase has been carrying the burden of restoring her family's honor entirely by herself. She entered the 7-Star Sword Art Festival for one reason only: to defeat Kurado and take back what her family lost. But somewhere along the way, her obsession with revenge completely twisted her swordsmanship. Meanwhile, Ayase visits her unconscious father and tells her mama that she will make it to the top and reclaim their family honor. Iki, on the other hand, finally understands why Ayase is really desperate to win. When his friends ask about his plans regarding the duel, he responds that he's going to give it all he's got, as it would be disrespectful to Ayase if he held back against her. When the hour for the duel arrives, the arena quickly fills with spectators eager to watch the fight between the well-skilled students, who both haven't lost a single match since the beginning of the tournament. The moment the match starts, Iki charges forward at Ayase, hoping to end things quickly, but suddenly feels a sharp pain in his body. A slash then appears out of nowhere, taking both him and the audience by surprise. It is then followed by a progressive amount of slashes, which appear across his body from multiple directions through the course of the duel, even though Ayase never physically touched him. It's then revealed that Ayase secretly placed invisible wind traps all over the battlefield before the match even started. The moment Iki steps into one, the compressed slashes activate instantly and cut into him. Since preparing traps beforehand violates the rules of the tournament, Ayase is technically cheating again. However, Iki already knew she would do something like this. Before the fight began, he privately asked the officials not to stop the match even if they noticed her breaking the rules, because he wanted to defeat her properly instead of winning through disqualification. Ayase continues attacking aggressively while using her noble art to worsen every injury Iki receives. With each movement, his wounds become deeper, and the audience slowly realizes just how dangerous Ayase's abilities really are. Still, despite his injuries and the side effects of Itoshura, Iki calmly begins analyzing the positions of her invisible traps. Little by little, he starts avoiding them through pure instinct and swordsmanship alone. As the battle continues, Iki finally confronts Ayase directly. He tells her that her swordsmanship has become hollow because she abandoned the pride she once carried. The elegant swordswoman he admired disappeared the moment she allowed revenge and desperation to control her heart. His words hit harder than any attack because Ayase already knows he's right, but she interrupts, telling him that if she learned from her father, it's that fighting with honor is pointless if one loses at the end of the day. Desperate to win, she launches another of her traps at Iki, but his perfect vision comes through as he evades it. Panicked, Ayase launches another sequence of attacks, but Iki easily evades them once more, proving that he has figured out her scheme completely. She then decides to go all out, channeling all her wind traps at Ayase, but he cuts through them easily and uses one of his secret techniques to take her down without causing any harm. Collapsing to the ground, Ayase refuses to accept defeat as she desperately struggles to stand back up, but her body refuses to move, as she has expended all her energy. Tears begin pouring from her eyes as all the pressure and frustration she's been carrying finally overwhelms her. Instead of humiliating her, Iki quietly walks over, acknowledging her struggles and explaining why a true swordsman should always fight with honor. Even after being manipulated and forced into a disadvantage, Iki doesn't hold it against her. He offers her his hand, asking her to let him take revenge against Kurado on her behalf, making her even more emotional. When she asks why he's still offering to help her, despite what she did, Iki simply responds that he had a policy to never ignore a baddie in distress. She then realizes her mistake as she accepts his hand, deciding to trust him just like how she trusted her father. Kaito had retired from fighting some years back due to heart problems. Although he was unable to hold a sword properly, he had kept his dojo running by training Ayase and some other students. But his focus was on Ayase, as he tried to instill all the techniques he knew into her, including Tenimohu, a secret technique passed down in their family. While training her, Kaito had told his daughter to never forget that the sword style is to protect people and not harm them. As promised, Iki and Stella escort Ayase to the dojo her family used to live in. On the way, they try to do some research on Kurado to know what exactly they're getting into. They're then surprised to discover that Kurado has a history of attacking local schools unofficially just to prove his strength. Ayase tells them about the day he had randomly pulled up at their dojo and defeated her father. According to her, Kurado had suddenly pulled up with his gang, causing trouble, so Kaito had been forced to intervene to protect his students. Kurado had then challenged Kaito to a duel, baiting him to stake the dojo on the outcome of their duel. Confident in his ability, the infamous samurai had agreed, but when the duel began, Kurado suddenly started fighting violently, pushing Kaito, who wasn't in his peak form, to the edge. Eventually, the delinquent gained the upper hand through his brute force and was able to knock Kaito off his feet. However, Kaito did not back down. He had continued fighting no matter how badly beaten he was, believing he could win. Ayase tried to interrupt the duel, but he had ordered her not to. Left without a choice, Kaito had then decided to use his secret techniques to end the duel. However, when he began the process, his heart condition kicked in, causing him to start coughing blood. Kurado, who had already started pissing his pants, then saw the opportunity and took it instantly, knocking the geezer to the ground. Winning the dojo, Kurado had then kicked Ayase and the rest of the students out of the dojo, as it had then become his property. From that moment, Ayase vowed that she would do whatever it took to take revenge and reclaim their family aura. Shortly after, the group arrives at Ayatsuji Dojo, which is now run by Kurado and his gang. Entering the compound, they're met with a bunch of gangsters who don't seem quite welcoming to see them. Iki is then forced to help them realize why he's the main character, and they're not. After taking care of the character extras, the team finds Kurado on a shabby couch within the dojo. Seeing them, Kurado immediately recognizes Iki as the weak student he bullied at a restaurant a couple of days ago. When he asks what they want, Iki boldly requests a duel for the dojo. Kurado, seeming skeptical, asks Iki to show his worth to be his opponent. Iki then shows him the student IDs of his fallen comrades to prove his strength. To spice things up, Iki asks him to use his actual weapon, as it would be more satisfying to beat him at his prime. Kurado then accepts the proposal, whipping out Orochimaru, his special blade, which is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. But Iki, unanticipated, casually draws his Intetsu, prepared for the duel. When the duel begins, Kurado attacks Iki viciously, not giving him any time to counter back. Despite the amount of pressure, Iki tries to counter, timing his counterattack perfectly. But it's all to no avail, as Kurado dodges it easily. Iki is then able to figure out the reason no one seems to be able to defeat Kurado: his insane reaction time. While the average swordsman's reflexes take 0.3 second, Iki, who has always been a prodigy, takes 0.1 second. However, Kurado's reflexes take even half of Iki's, which shouldn't even be attainable for a human. Kurado commends him for figuring out his moves, but points out that it wouldn't matter, as he'd be getting dropped anyway. With that said, he uses a special technique, which duplicates his weapon mid-attack, hitting Iki from different directions. Iki tries his best to keep up, but it only makes Kurado more serious, as he keeps increasing the frequency of the attack. Soon enough, the speed of the weapon intensifies to the point where Iki starts getting attacked from 4 simultaneous directions, causing him to take damage. Seeing this, Ayase tries to interfere, but Stella stops her, pointing out that Iki has been smiling the entire time. She then remembers that her father seemed to have a similar smile during his fight with Kurado. Given the circumstances, Ayase then realizes that after her father's defeat, the apology she assumed he offered to her had been directed at Kurado because of the terrible state of his body. Meanwhile, during the duel, it becomes clear that Kurado's major weakness is his endurance, as his techniques require a lot of physical energy to perform. And he rarely runs into opponents like Iki, who would force him to keep going all out for long. Smiling like freaks, Iki and Kurado chat while they catch their breath from exhaustion. After confirming that the last samurai had also smiled during his last battle, Iki promises Ayase that he will get back the dojo for her. He then prepares a new technique as he charges at Kurado. Noticing the change in energy, Kurado immediately transforms his weapon into a more dangerous form, launching it at Iki as well. To his surprise, rather than dodging as usual, Iki charges straight at him while preparing his technique. He then shortly realizes from Iki's stance that the technique he's trying to perform happens to be the same one Kito tried to use to take him out. He tries to intensify his attack, but it's pointless as Iki injures him on the spot, winning the duel. Ayase, recognizing the technique, asks how Iki was able to execute it perfectly. Stella then reminds her that Iki has a special technique, which enables him to copy other people's techniques, and that he must have seen her do it one day during their training sessions. Kurado, injured, asks Iki for his name on his way out. He then tells him that they will finish their battle at the tournament, as he leaves the dojo for good. After Kurado leaves, Ayase apologizes to Iki, calling herself unworthy to carry on her father's sword style. But Iki tells her that it was thanks to her memorizing the sword style to the very last inch that he was able to win. He then assures her she's the true successor to the last samurai. Shortly after, while Iki and Stella sit alone in a park, they discuss how Ayase had admitted to cheating during her match with Iki, resulting in her getting disqualified from the selection battle and being suspended from school for 10 days. Moments later, they received a text from Ayase stating that her father had finally regained consciousness. While reminiscing about the sequence of good things happening around them, Iki and Stella try to have a couple's moment, but are interrupted by Shizuku and Alice, who show up out of the blue to tease them. After winning 12 consecutive matches in the selection battles, Iki and Stella are suddenly told by Kurono that they'll be going on a trip to Okutama for training purposes. Seeing how they were the only ones selected, Stella immediately assumes it's basically a vacation for the two of them. She then gets excited at the idea of finally spending some uninterrupted time alone with Iki. Meanwhile, Shizuku is furious that she wasn't scheduled to go with them, even though she has won 12 consecutive matches as well. But Alice calms her down, assuring her that it probably won't turn out the way she's imagining it. After the long bus ride, Iki and Stella finally arrive in the mountains, expecting a peaceful break. While they head towards the location, Stella brings up conversations about how they finally seem like an actual couple. Iki then starts to think about the diabolical backshots he has always wanted to give Stella, but never got the chance to. But his thoughts are suddenly cut short when he notices a group of people standing at a distance from them. They both immediately get cautious, assuming the worst, but when they get close enough, they're surprised to discover that the suspicious-looking people are actually members of the student council, who claim to have been expecting them. Contrary to what they were expecting, Iki and Stella immediately get dragged into cleaning and preparing a huge lodge for an upcoming training camp involving the student representatives. Stella is visibly disappointed after realizing the so-called vacation was basically just free labor disguised as a trip. After deep cleaning the entire building for hours, Stella suggests that Iki come with her to see a waterfall. Hearing about it, the other council members try to tag along, but she insists on only Iki coming with her, so they immediately get the message. At the same time, Shizuku returns to the Kurogane household after receiving a letter supposedly from her mother. Since she despises her father so much, when she arrives, she seems really tense, but she sees her cat, so it helps her calm down. Shortly after she arrives, she gets summoned by her father into his chambers. Meanwhile, while Stella and Iki walk towards the faraway waterfall spot, Stella suddenly starts acting strangely. Iki asks about it, but she brushes his concerns away, assuring him that she is fine. But things progressively get worse, as she begins to feel weak and feverish all at once. Since she has clearly been skipping biology class, she asks Iki if the symptoms she's experiencing are a result of the kiss they shared a couple of days ago, insinuating that she might be pregnant. But Iki assures her that that's not how it works. He tells her that she has probably caught a cold, taking her by surprise, as she has never caught one before. Iki decides to take her back to camp, but before they can get far enough, it suddenly begins to rain heavily. Given Stella's worsening condition, he's then forced to search for an alternative. Looking around, Ike finds an abandoned mountain cabin nearby, so he decides to take Stella there. Unknown to them, they're being watched by a suspicious man hidden in the trees. Getting into the cabin, Iki quickly starts a fire to keep them warm. Seeing that Stella has developed a serious fever, Iki tells her she needs to remove her wet clothes before her condition worsens further. The situation then becomes awkward almost immediately, with Stella getting really embarrassed. To make her feel less uncomfortable, Iki takes off his own clothes, reminding her of the embarrassing way they first met. While Stella tries to take off her clothes, she realizes that she's too weak and can't even move properly, so she beckons Iki to help her. Iki, trying to maintain the 206 bones in his body, tries to be as respectful as possible while helping her undress, but loses it completely when she makes him take off her plot armor as well. Seeing her bare melons, Iki gets completely bricked up, so Stella is forced to ask if he wants to crack her. Flustered by the unexpected question, Iki goes off completely in his head, but tries to maintain maximum composure. Despite clearly being attracted to her, he refuses, explaining that he doesn't want their relationship to become something purely physical before he can properly stand beside her with pride. He says he wants to someday be able to openly tell both her family and his own that he truly loves her without shame or regret, and that he doesn't feel worthy enough to do so yet. Stella quietly accepts his answer, realizing how seriously Iki values their relationship. However, the peaceful moment is interrupted when Iki receives a phone call from the student council, asking for their location. Unknown to them, they're already being targeted by outsiders nearby. Meanwhile, when Shizuku meets up with Itsuki, her father, he reveals that he was the one who made her mother write her a letter, as he knows she wouldn't have responded any other way. Itsuki congratulates her for winning 12 matches in a row, stating that she's living up to the Kurogane name. But Shizuku immediately asks whether he feels the same pride toward Iki, who achieved the same results. Itsuki avoids giving a proper answer, making it obvious that his treatment of Iki hasn't changed at all. Furious, Shizuku storms out. Back at the cabin, Iki suddenly senses danger outside. The moment he steps out, he sees a gigantic rock golem trying to smash the entire cabin. He's then forced to activate his Itu Shuro, which he barely uses to save Stella from being sandwiched. Iki immediately uses the momentum to slice apart the massive golem. However, the destroyed rocks simply reform into multiple smaller golems that continue attacking. Iki does his best to fight them off while trying to protect Stella at the same time, but the sheer number of enemies quickly overwhelms him. Eventually, they knock him aside and begin closing in on the weakened Stella. Before they can reach her, the student council suddenly arrives. Renren quickly carries Stella away to safety, while Saijo and the others help hold off the creatures. During the fight, Utakata analyzes the situation and explains that the golems are likely being controlled remotely by a blazer, using steel wire abilities to manipulate inorganic objects from a distance. As they struggle against the endless attacks, another student suddenly appears and instantly changes the entire battle. A girl wearing glasses and a Hagun Academy uniform calmly enters the battlefield and destroys the smaller golems effortlessly. She then unleashes an overwhelming lightning attack called Raikiri, annihilating the gigantic golem and electrocuting the person controlling it from afar. Iki immediately recognizes the girl as Toka Tudu, Hagun Academy's strongest knight, and one of the top 4 fighters from the previous 7-star Sword Art Festival. She is also the student council president. Elsewhere, the person behind the attack is revealed to be connected to a mysterious man in a red suit, showing that the assault was not random at all. That night, Shizuku receives a notification informing her that her next opponent for the duel is no one but Toka. Shizuku recalls how her childhood went in the Kurogane household. Since she had been a very talented blazer from the start, she had been privileged to get away with whatever she wanted. As a result, she had grown into getting disgusted by not just other humans, but herself as well. It all then changed when one day, a young Iki slapped her, calling out one of her wrongdoings. Although he got severely punished for it by the adults, Shizuku had then decided from that point on that no matter what happens, she would follow her beloved brother, ignorant of what his situation was actually like. That evening, Stella, Iki, and Alice read from a newspaper article, which believed that the rock puppet who had attacked them was an actual living giant, which seems rather unlikely. Iki tells them that even after investing thoroughly, they still weren't able to find out who was behind the attack. Their conversation then shifts to Shizuku's forthcoming duel with Toka. Stella expresses her worry about Shizuku, as she believes Toka is a dangerous opponent for her, being a lightning user. But Alice points out that Shizuku can manipulate the impurities of water so it doesn't conduct electricity, relieving her a bit. However, Iki is still visibly worried, as he knows the battle is not going to be easy, and he doesn't want his sister to incur any massive injuries. Meanwhile, Shizuku, overwhelmed by her thoughts, decides to take a shower. She is then approached by Stella, who expresses her worry, trying to calm her down, but Shizuku rage-baits her, forcing her to leave. After she leaves, Alice shows up and takes Shizuku outside to talk. He then tells Shizuku about how the others are worried about her, prompting her to want to win even more. Seeing how terrible Iki is being treated by the rest of the family, she has a personal resolve to become strong enough so she can fight alongside him. The following day, the match finally begins, and both participants are welcomed to the ring by the announcer, who also introduces a disinterested Nene as commentator. At the beginning of the match, neither of the participants moves an inch, as they both understand how critical the moment is. Iki explains that Toka's deadly technique, Raikiri, is so powerful that even the 7 Sword Art champions had to stay out of its range to win. As a result, he believes that Shizuku will try her best to remain out of Toka's range while focusing on long-ranged attacks. Shizuku then makes the first move, using her water Tudohagen, her water technique, to create a large water body which she launches at Toka. As expected, the lighting prodigy cuts through them easily as she tries to close the gap. But clever Shizuku keeps spamming more long-ranged attacks as she uses the opportunity to get some more distance. Eventually, Toka creates an opening, but as soon as she's about to charge at Shizuku freezes the already conjured water, covering the entire ring in ice and trapping Toka's legs. She then launches a progression of ice attacks, but Toka cuts through them easily. Shizuku resumes her assault, launching water slashes, but Toka easily blocks them. In a moment of hesitation, Shizuku is suddenly struck. It is later revealed to be a water clone, but despite this, Shizuku is still slightly cut by Toka's blade. She then senses that something is off, as Toka seems not only to be predicting her movements perfectly, but also messing with her field of vision and response time. Toka then launches a rapid assault, overwhelming Shizuku's defenses completely. The commentator searches for Nene's input regarding the battle, but realizes that Nene is nowhere to be found. After examining closely, Iki realizes that Toka is using the same technique Nene previously demonstrated during his own match preparations. Nene then suddenly shows up next to him and confirms it. She explains that the technique is called Nukiashi, and it involves combining stealth movement and breathing control derived from an ancient martial art. After saying that, she immediately hops on Stella and starts fondling her in broad daylight. Iki explains that Nukiashi interferes with Shizuku's subconscious perception, making Toka's movements harder to track. Kurano then appears and confirms that Toka and Nene were trained under the same master, Nangao Torajiro, the god of war. Realizing the reason for their power gap, Iki concludes that unless Shizuku finds a way to counter Toka's movement, she will lose. Stella then begins cheering Shizuku on, encouraging her to keep fighting. Hearing Stella's voice, Shizuku regains her resolve. Without admitting it, she is moved by the support. She immediately heals her wounds using water manipulation and prepares to use her trump card, determined to reach the 7-Star Sword Art Festival alongside everyone else. Shizuku uses stored water flasks to expand her control over the arena, creating more ice structures to limit Toka's movement. She then sends Toka sliding toward close range, where she attempts another finishing attack. Regaining the advantage, Toka strikes again, but the target turns out to be a water clone. Multiple clones then appear across the battlefield, each charging at Toka with powerful water attacks. Toka manages to destroy each of the clones, but Shizuku suddenly activates a special technique that fills the arena with thick mist, restricting visibility. Inside the fog, she coats her weapon with water and launches continuous hidden attacks using the moisture from her clones. Following the perfect sequence of attacks, Shizuku then swiftly moves in for a final strike. However, Toka reads through the deception easily. The moment Shizuku commits to her attack, Toka activates Raikiri and strikes before Shizuku can land her blow. The fog then clears, and Shizuku collapses, so Toka is declared the winner. Moments later, Shizuku wakes up in the medical ward. When she wakes up, she sees Iki, Stella, and Alice in the room with her. Feeling emotionally overwhelmed, Shizuku asks them to leave, so Iki and Stella respect her request as they step out. However, Alice remains behind. He then comforts her, assuring her that she did well, and for the first time, Shizuku breaks down into his arms, bawling her eyes out. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Iki quietly remarks that Shizuku has become really strong despite her loss. Elsewhere, Itsuki receives news of Shizuku's defeat. A suited man beside him asks what should be done next, and without hesitation, Itsuki instructs him to proceed as planned. Days later, after winning another match, Stella goes on a walk with Iki to talk about their promise to fight again at the top. But then they skip all the small talk to suck faces without realizing that a creep has been taking pictures of them. Later on, Kurano calls him to her office to ask if he knows anything about Mamoru, who turns out to be a member of the International Federation of Knights. After he tells her that Mamoru frequently visits the family home since he works closely with Itsuki, she tells him they recently found him snooping around the academy, which means he is probably looking for a reason to get Iki expelled. Iki then offers to leave if his presence is causing trouble to the academy, but Kurano stops him from completing the sentence and reminds him of her promise to protect every student regardless of who they are. Hours later, he meets up with Stella again, but instead of smooching, they walk into the student council office and find Toka on the floor with her cake factory exposed. After scolding Misagi and the others for littering the place, she tries to introduce herself in a respectful manner, but Stella tells her to start by fixing her skirt. Moments later, they all get to an orphanage, and Misagi explains that he and Toka actually grew up in one before their powers led to a better life in the academy. As they spend the rest of the day playing with the youngsters and feeding them, Iki notices a strange sense of happiness from Toka, and eventually asks Misagi, who then explains that taking care of the orphans is the source of her power and motivation. Upon hearing this, Iki tries to figure out where his motivation comes from, but remains confused until he and Stella get back to the academy. Just then, Alice, Shizuoku, and Kaigami run up to show them a viral new printout, making it sound like they have been engaging in unholy acts all over campus. After reading all the details on how Iki is a supposedly corrupt student with a bad attitude, Stella burns the paper and tries to take her anger out on something else, but then Mamoru suddenly pulls up and asks Iki to come with him for an interrogation. As usual, Stella tries to stand up for him since he didn't do anything wrong, but he stops her and promises that everything will be okay before getting into the car. However, his entire life switches to dark mode as he gets arrested just a couple of minutes later and forced to appear in front of a court led by the same guy who has spent his entire life trying to ruin him. When the human walrus asks why he is getting freaky with a princess on campus, Iki tries to explain that they never actually did anything wrong, but Mamoru quickly tells him to stop talking. Despite this, Iki still explains that he truly loves Stella and would never go against his moral code for pleasure, so they toss him in a cell. As the days go on, they make Yuri bring the rest of his contestants to the facility to make it harder for him to win, but he still manages to keep his perfect streak, while Stella also pushes past all the gossip to make sure their promise stays alive. During lunch, several days later, they realize that the rumors about him have gotten even worse, so Stella asks if dating him was a mistake, but Shizuku suddenly attacks and promises to never forgive her if she disrespects the sacrifices Iki is making just to prove that they actually love each other. After training the next day, Stella decides to help Iki remember her love by cutting off some of her hair and convincing Yuri to sneak it in for him during one of his fights. When he finally gets the chance to look at it, his confidence returns, so he waits for another court hearing and asks for an audience with its key, since he is the one behind it. Surprisingly, they grant his request, so he walks into its key's office and takes a long look at him before realizing that all he has ever actually wanted was to be recognized by his own father. When he decides to speak from the heart and promises that he will keep fighting to make the family proud of him, its key turns to face him and says he always knew he was a good swordsman. This initially surprises Iki, but the real shock sets in when its key tells him that there is no point to his achievements if he doesn't have real talent or magic abilities. Like that isn't enough. He goes on to explain how he has always wanted nothing more than for Iki to settle into being a nobody, because his obsession with achieving something great will only make another set of powerless nobodies believe that they stand a chance. After a couple more minutes of verbal abuse, Iki realizes that he nevertheless didn't mean anything to the family and starts crying, but its key sends him back to the cell to continue repeating the same grueling battles. Days later, Mamoru calls him out again, but this time, they promise to let him continue chasing his dreams if he can defeat Toka. The following evening, Toka calls Shizuku to the council office to tell her about the fight and says that she won't go easy on him even if Iki is too weak and bruised up to fight in the first place. She then asks Shizuku to try convincing him to forfeit the match since that is the only way out of possibly signing his own death certificate. Minutes later, she returns to her room and tells Alice about everything before asking for his opinion. He simply says she is the only one capable of making that decision, and she should follow her heart. While Shizuku becomes confused because this last fight will determine the fate of Iki's dreams, Toka wonders if she'll be proud if she wins Iki and qualifies for nationals. She asks Yuta for his opinion, and he tells her that even though the adults have arranged the match in their favor, she should fight in a manner that she'd be proud of. That night, Stella trains like crazy while she thinks of Iki, who despairs about where he's trapped. The next day, every student on campus flocks to the central arena as the final duels to determine which students get to represent the academy kick off. However, unlike all the other matches leading up to this, the level of excitement from students reaches new heights as they wait to see Toka and Iki take to the stage for what might be the most intense duel in the academy's history. While they continue talking about who might win, Nene and Kurono see a bunch of news helicopters waiting to broadcast it and realize that Mamoru set it all up to humiliate Iki. The next moment, an old geezer named Danjo shows up to watch the fight with them, but Nina freaks out upon seeing him because he is actually her master. When he admits that Iki is the main reason he came to watch, Mamoru asks if it's because of the long-standing feud between their families. They all try to ignore him like an unwanted ad until he says that Iki will automatically fail the match if he doesn't show up in the next few minutes. Upon hearing this, Kurano immediately asks why they didn't bring him from the facility as promised, but Mamoru claims they have nothing to do with it because he suddenly left on his own. By then, Iki, who has been dragging himself across the road, starts slipping into insanity as his mind splits in two and becomes his #1 biggest hater. However, after refusing to listen to his dark self-hating alter ego, he falls into Shizuku's arms and sees all his fans cheering behind her. When Stella also shows him the medal she got for qualifying for the Nationals, he regains some confidence and decides to make her proud by defeating Toka. Just then, Toka hears all the students cheering and gets up to fight, so Misagi wishes her luck before she heads to the arena to face Iki. Upon seeing that he still made it, Mamoru struggles to hide his anger, while Alice, who also qualified to enter Nationals, joins the girls to watch. Before starting, Toka tells Iki that she won't be going easy on him even if his injuries give her an unfair advantage, but he claims it won't be a problem and promises to overpower her. As soon as she summons her sword, he activates his trump card, and Shizuku immediately asks if he has lost his mind because he always saves it for the last attack, but Stella tells her not to worry because he plans to brute force his way to victory. Toka notices this and also decides to use her finishing move, but as soon as they both charge in, Iki sacrifices his blood vessels and every last drop of energy to push past his limits. The next moment, everyone in the arena goes silent and watches in shock as Toka's sword shatters before she passes out. After Iki raises his hand to accept the victory, Mamoru completely loses it and runs out to unalive him in broad daylight. But Stella smacks him away like a worthless bowling ball before running up to hug Iki. While Shizuku and the others watch with excitement and cheer him on, he suddenly asks if she would like to be in his life forever, causing another wave of shock to spread through the arena. And everyone struggles to believe that he just proposed to a princess while being broadcast to the entire nation. After Stella accepts his proposal with a kiss, her dad calls its key to express disappointment over the fact that he spent all these years trying to destroy his own son. Days later, Toka presents Iki and all the other winners as the Academy representatives for Nationals, and after the usual glazing, she makes Iki their captain and calls him up to receive the flag. She then claims to be happy that he defeated her with a single move, and he also thanks her for helping him realize that men are always stronger before accepting the flag, and finally receiving all the praise his dad kept him from all these years. Later on, he and Stella meet up to finally get freaky with each other, but Shizuku and her sausage-loving bestie show up as usual to interrupt them. Thanks for sticking to the end of the video. Comment on your best ship and why you think it's better than Iki Stella. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned to our latest videos.